All right, good evening, everybody. So we have a question from Torres Life, who I know is somewhat what you might call a hate watcher or something like that, but nonetheless has a good question, and I'm happy to answer. So the question is, do you celebrate the Gentile holiday of Halloween? Which some people might be confused because they saw some videos of me going with my kids to a Halloween store. And my answer is no. I should have put a comma there. Maybe I can even edit it here. Edit. I'll put a comma in just for the sake of good grammar. Oh, I think I put a comma at the end too. That should be a period. So never before have you seen on YouTube someone editing a YouTube comment in real time on YouTube. That's just how I roll. I learned from Rabbi Bart Sadok. Don't edit your videos. Just let it roll. People like the real deal. So anyway, my answer here is no. But I like to go to Halloween stores to buy Purim costumes, and to have a little bit of chokhmah is you buy them after Halloween. Of course, the stores are still open. The Spirit Halloween and some of these other stores, they open up. And they're entertaining to go look at and so forth, and they have some costumes that might be good for Purim. And that's a little bit. And actually also we went even during Sukkot and before Sukkot, and we got some Sukkot decorations also. In any event, that opens up another question about, in general, what is the halachic ramifications of Halloween? Is it permitted? Is it prohibited? And how should we approach it? And also, how did our tzaddikim approach this day? And what are the halachic ramifications of it? So first of all, it's unequivocally asur. It's forbidden to actually engage in pagan rites to celebrate Halloween. And it's also forbidden to engage in the Catholic rites of Halloween, which was in a sense an attempt by the Catholic Church to remove this popular holiday from its pagan roots and turn it into a day of devotion. We know particularly in Mexican culture, they have La Dia de los Muertes, Day of the Dead, which is connected to the Catholic celebration of All Souls Day, which is All Hallows Eve. Also, that's where the name Halloween comes from, because it's the eve of All Hallows Day, which is the Saint Day, the All Saints Day, meaning in the Catholic Church, as is practiced in other traditional churches, there are saint days to celebrate the various saints. And similarly, lahavdil, we in Judaism, we remember those who have passed on as well, including our saints, our tzaddikim, particularly on the Yortzeit. And generally my understanding is if they're able to do so, they'll also, in the Catholic Church, the anniversary of the death of the saint would be their feast day. And it's a very, very similar type of devotion that you find both in the Hasidic Jewish world and the Sephardic Jewish world, and lahavdil in the Catholic world, as well as in the other traditional churches, the Eastern Orthodox Church, and to a lesser extent in the Anglican churches, the Episcopal churches, and other similar churches that are liturgical might celebrate saints' days. And these are days to celebrate these people who have moved on to the next world. There's a lot of confusion. A lot of people accuse, particularly more of the born-again Christians, will accuse Catholics of worshiping their saints. Whereas they might have, really it's more that they have devotions to the saints, they have veneration of the saints, but they do not worship the saints. More or less the way they explain it is that the fellowship of the saints, more or less, it's almost identical to how we view our tzaddikim, and It's the same thing that you'll find in Sufi Islam and to a certain extent in Shiite Islam as well. The veneration of the saints that we have in our various traditions. And so too, even in the non-Abrahamic traditions as well, in Buddhism and other traditions, they have devotions to those who've passed on, as well as a veneration of ancestors in Far Eastern religions. Buddhism, of course, is popular throughout the Far East, but it originated in India, Nepal, that area. But the Confucian traditions and the filial piety and so forth, and to a certain extent the Taoist traditions as well also have similar approaches. But in any event, so the Catholic Church picked November 1st to be All Saints' Day. That's not observed the same way in other churches as it is in the Catholic Church. In the Catholic Church, it's a holy day of obligation, All Saints' Day. I don't think in the Eastern Orthodox churches, I don't think November 1st is their All Saints' Day. I think they might have another day when they remember all the saints. I'm not sure. And that includes the known saints, the unknown saints, and so forth. Now, obviously, in our world, we'll say that their saints are not saints, and sometimes a lot of their saints might be pretty bad dudes, according to the way we view history. But nonetheless, so we have these various things. But I mean, no one can look at the way we celebrate Lag Bomer and the veneration that we have for Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Zechusia Galeno, and not say that it's not in some way akin to how these other religions have their devotions. That's just how it is. It's really, and they're very, very similar types of things. So it's not for us to really look down on them for having the same types of devotions that we have in our tradition, just to different saints, because those are the saints of their traditions. Although again, we can say that their saints aren't saints. Maybe some of them were and some of them weren't. We really don't know. But that's a different type of a thing. In the Catholic Church, they have a very hierarchical and liturgical idea of how they canonize their saints and so forth, and there's a lot of work that goes into that. We don't have that type of approach in Judaism. It's really more or less who do the people popularly venerate. That's really what comes down from it. It's a folk religion, it's a popular thing, and it's not official at all, and it's frowned upon by a lot of the rabbis historically. But nonetheless, it became really a part of, certainly in Hasidic Judaism, it's one of the major forms of devotion that is popular in Hasidic Judaism. I mean, you're going to go and visit the grave of the tzaddik on his yahrzeit, light candles, learn his teachings, enjoy a feast where you'll share his teachings and sing some hymns and some psalms and so forth. And people have a devotion to a particular tzaddik who generally, experience that and go into that. There's some that are like, we could say Velt tzaddikim, that everybody goes to, whether it's of course Rashbi is the biggest, or Shimon ben Yochai, but also some of the more modern tzaddikim that are, whether it's Rebbe Melech, whether it's Reb Nachman Breslover, although his yahrzeit is during Chol Moed Sukkos, so it's not a conducive time to make a pilgrimage. So a lot of people, of course, took on to his statements about Rosh Hashanah to say that they should go to his grave on Rosh Hashanah, to Rabbi Nachman, and more recent times of Shaila Kerestir. And it's funny because, like, I remember, a Ingerman, a rabbi, a Kiruv rabbi, in our area, and he used to have a house in my neighborhood, and he sold the house, and he was saying something along the lines that we got to find some tzaddik that we can make some money off, and as if it's just something that you could just do. And the truth is, it's something that happens more or less organically. There's no way to just make these things happen. And the Rimnitzer is another one who just had his yard site. And it's interesting how everybody goes to the Rimnitzer to a certain extent. Certainly Satmarov, it's not just because he has so many Hasidim, but even people from outside the Satmar community make the pilgrimage and so forth. So it's a very similar thing. And then but lahavdil, of course, the other tzaddikim, this is what we have by our tzaddikim. It's interesting, the Berditchever, whose yard site was this week, certainly is a Veltz tzaddik, but we don't see as much people specifically going to his kever for his yard site. It could also have to do with the fact that it's right after Yontif and it's hard to go there. But the thing is, it's hard to go to Uman and Rosh Hashanah, and everybody goes. And why is it like that? That that so many more people go to Lezhensk, for example, than to Berditchev, and it's difficult to go to Lezhensk. It's a week before Purim, a week after Purim. It's 3 weeks before Pesach. I guess that might have to do with just the husbands don't want to help their wives clean for Pesach. That would be the cynical type of answer. But the truth is that there's something that actually, according to the Hasidic approach, is that the tzaddik himself has this thing that it has to do with the tzaddik himself. He calls the people who was worthy to come and visit his grave and make the pilgrimage and so forth, and as well as how we celebrate even those who don't physically go to make the pilgrimage, make the voyage, get on a plane and fly to Poland or Ukraine or wherever else, or to Israel, or if you live in Israel, to go up to the north, to go to Meron and this and that. It's or even you live in Brooklyn, you go to Monroe or whatever, or to the Lubavitcher Rebbe on Gimel Tammuz, or in Yud Shvat and so forth. And it's not to say that you don't have big crowds going to Berditchev, but they're much more, and in the old days there were certain tzaddikim that were, before the war, they were the major pilgrimage places. Rabbi Isaac Kaliver was tremendous location where the people would go to make a pilgrimage to Kalev on Zion Adar. Again, that's a week before Purim, and I'm sorry, I said Ur Vermelch the week after Purim. Not easy times necessarily to go make a long voyage. Shaila Karasir, I think we mentioned, but we see that and even people, if they can't make it to Shaila, they go to Staten Island, where my Elter Zayd is buried, right next to maybe 100 feet away, maybe less, in the same chelka with Shaila's breeder, with Regina Tzvi, with Herman Steiner. In any event, who we really don't know that much about him, other than that he sold matzahs and that he lived in Westchester, but in Mount Vernon. But nonetheless, now people they go to Shaila's breeder because someone had a dream. Anyway, this is not the subject that I'm talking about, but the point that I'm bringing out here is that it's not for us to judge these other religions that do very similar things. And so the Catholics, the difference is they took the pagan holidays and tried to turn them into Catholic holidays, and sometimes they even took pagan deities, pagan gods. Saint Bridget is a big example, very popular saint in Ireland, who was a pagan goddess. Was not there's no historical record of such a person, but they turned this woman who was worshipped by the Celts, and took her day to be a holiday in Ireland. So these similar types of things, and many people ask that even these various pagan deities that the pagan religions venerate, are they themselves based on human beings originally? Was Odin and Thor and were they human beings that were elevated to a god status by these various pagan religions. Historically, we don't really know that much, particularly about the history of the Norse. A lot of these things are, they're trying to reconstruct and learn about, because people found interest in going back to these religions that they really don't have any Masorah for, the way that we have. In Judaism, we have a strong Masorah that goes back to Mount Sinai. Not only the superiority that monotheism has over polytheism and so forth, but the fact that Hashem, that the Creator, that our God is in a totally different category. That it's almost not right to call these gods of the other nations gods, except for the Torah uses the word Elohim to refer also to angels. And again, we mentioned what Alan Watts said, that really it's wrong for us to call the Hindu gods gods. We should call them angels. People in the Abrahamic traditions, and then we understand it a little better, because the Hindus do have this idea of Brahman, and not Brahma, that's something else, but Brahmin, that is essentially this ineffable and totally transcendent force that is essentially the god of monotheism, as the Hindus understand it. And then they have these millions and millions of little g gods, which, again, even the Rambam lists the 10 species of angels, and one of them is Elohim, and another is B'nai Elohim, that they're gods with the little g, and the sons of gods, or perhaps the sons of God. And that these are different species of angels that exist, according to Maimonides, the great rationalist, recognizes this, while saying that we're not allowed to worship anything other than the one Creator God. We're not allowed to pray to anyone but the one Creator God. And sometimes within Jewish communities, you do have these problems that people cross the line within their veneration to tzaddikim, meaning to give kavod to the tzaddikim. And certainly there is an idea that you can talk to the tzaddikim who have passed on and ask them to pray for you, perhaps even ask them to bless you, just like you can ask a living tzaddik to bless you. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that, according to a lot of pretty mainstream Hasidic interpretations. Nonetheless, we do not, we're not allowed to pray to them. I mean, I heard a story that, someone, they were, asking Rebbe Shimon to bring someone back from the dead even, and to that might cross the line. That might cross the line. I'm not a posek to know enough to say that it does, but it certainly is not something that one should be engaging in. We address all of our prayers, certainly for such an outlandish miracle. We address that directly to the Creator and not to anyone else. But in any event, again, this is the point I'm bringing out here, is that there really isn't that much difference as we think between us and them. We really shouldn't be putting everybody else down for being different than what we do. That's the point that I want to bring out. But we do our thing, and we're not allowed to do their thing. Whatever we do is what we do, whatever they do is what they do. So certainly we cannot celebrate with the Catholics their All Saints Day or their Day of the Dead or anything like that, or the eve of the All Saints Day. And also we cannot celebrate with the Wiccans Samhain or Samhain, which the way it's spelled, people would think it's Samhain. We cannot celebrate I think it's called Winter's Night with the Wintersnacht with the with the Norse pagans. We're not allowed to do that. What about kids putting on costumes and going door to door trick-or-treating? What about that? First of all, candy, a lot of it isn't kosher, and even if it's kosher, call it stam, whatever. That's one part of it, but really much more important than that is that it is too much of a pagan day that we are absolutely not allowed to engage in actually celebrating even if something that seems so innocuous, like putting on a costume and getting candy from the neighbors. It's how do we get over there? It's really not the it's really not allowed. It's something we're it's absolutely forbidden. However, one point, and it's different than Thanksgiving, that some Gedolim celebrated and others said was forbidden to celebrate. So you have these different views about Thanksgiving, but Halloween is certainly forbidden. Actually, the truth is, there's only one time that I know of that the Satmarov and Lubavitcher Rebbe met each other, and it was when the Satmarov was sitting Shiva for his daughter, and their conversation was about the halachas of Halloween, and I think you can find in some of the Lubavitcher writings a little bit of the discussion there. And then the story goes that Rav Aaron Kotler also was there at the same time, and that's what they were discussing. And I think also part of the story was that the Satmarov didn't know who the Lubavitcher Rebbe was, and so he saw a gabbai with a bent up hat, with a Hamburg and a gray beard, and a German with a black beard and a fedora. So he assumed that the German was the Gabba, and the older Yid with the Hadras Panim was the Rebbe, and it was actually the opposite. That's part of the story. But I don't remember exactly. I think in the end they essentially said that it's really not. It's not really that. It's gotten to the point where it's divorced from its pagan roots, and so it's not an actual Isser, but it's still something people should not be engaging in. Doing these types of things, and obviously there's a lot of other problematic things that are involved with these days. As opposed to Thanksgiving, which is a beautiful idea, to give thanks to God, to as you understand it as an American. Two totally different things. And there was actually an article, might still be online, on a website called Torah from Dixie, and it goes through the halachic ramifications of both of these fall time holidays, saying that Thanksgiving, some say it's forbidden, some say it's permitted, some say it's even a mitzvah, and the different ramifications of that, as opposed to Halloween, everybody agrees is forbidden. The only thing is that Rav Pam, Zechusi Yolenu, was one of the great tzaddikim and Talmidei Chachamim and Gedolim. The story goes is that whenever a Gentile child would knock on his door trick-or-treating, he would always, with a big smile, and if anyone ever saw, you see a picture of Rav Pam, he was such a holy-looking person with a beautiful smile, and they say that he always gave a big smile and gave a nice piece of candy and made sure to have it there for the Gentile children who were trick-or-treating. And that is a positive thing. I mean, where I live, I don't really have kids around, and we're not really. But I always try to have some candy in the house for Halloween, just in case a trick-or-treater comes. And now, what about, I like to go to these conventions, and they're around the Halloween time. They're not really about Halloween. Most of them are about science fiction and, really not Halloween type of themes, to be honest. So it's in a different category. It just it happens to be around Halloween, but it's not really anything to do with the pagan holidays or the Christian, the Catholic holidays. It's not trick or treating. I don't dress up in a costume or anything else. Just the one that's actually on Halloween. Most of the people signing autographs are sitcom actors and stuff. It has nothing to do with Halloween, and I'll probably still go. But it's just because that's the date. It's irrelevant. It's kind of like Ramos's tshuva about the turkey on Thanksgiving, because he held there might be some Isser, but still, although he had 3 tshuvas on it, and they all contradict each other. Obviously, Rav Victor Miller, I'm a big fan of Rav Victor Miller, and I kind of feel it doesn't seem to be l'shitasa. If you really follow a lot of the things he says, he holds totally usher, and Rav Soloveitchik holds it was like a mitzvah. But really, if you go to the original way that American Jews celebrated, and the history of the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue and George Washington and everything, there's if there was some Isser involved in it, I'm talking Thanksgiving, why did Gershom Sheshis and the other tzaddikim who were at that time engage in this? There's no problem with that. Nadarabba, it's a good thing to show that we're all together serving God as Americans, and that America is one nation under God, unlike Lahavdil, the Zionist entity that's occupying our holy land. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later. How do I turn this off?